All right, it is 7:35 now. I so apologize for this delay. Really appreciate everybody's patience. I'm going to call this meeting to order. For the records for this meeting, we did previously start the meeting doing the Pledge of Allegiance, roll call, and just barely getting into public comments. But we are going to go back through roll call and then reopen public comments. So Rory, will you take our roll?
Yes. Councilmember Robinson.
Here.
Gettle.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Berry.
Here.
And Glover.
Here. Thank you. And before we get to public comments, I'm going to actually, our city manager, Matt Dahl, is going to say something.
Again, thank you for your patience this evening. For anyone who's listening to this recording or in this room, the normal equipment that we use in order to broadcast this on the meeting online, as well as to record it, is having some technical difficulties this evening. We will be posting online that we have these technical difficulties. However, we are still able to record through another method, and at the earliest possible time, we will post that recording online so everyone will be able to still hear this meeting. So we'll make sure that it is still transparent and everyone has access to it. But that's what we're going to do this evening. And again, I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Matt. All right, so now we'll move into public comments. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for a public hearing on the agenda may address the city council at this point by stepping to the microphone and giving their name.
Hello, I am Allison, and we are members of the Keystone Club at Boys and Girls Club in Midvale. We have been working on a community advocacy project focusing on the topic of COVID-19 vaccinations.
As we go into the third year of the pandemic, the biggest piece of advice that the public has been given is to keep up to date in receiving their COVID-19 vaccines and booster shots in order to protect themselves from getting sick. As a county, Salt Lake has done a great job of administering COVID-19 vaccines with a 74.7% of residents receiving at least one dose and 67.3% of residents being fully vaccinated.
The CDC has made it clear that the most effective way of avoiding COVID-19 is not only to be fully vaccinated, but to keep it update and receiving booster shots as well. As different variants of COVID-19 beginning to develop and become stronger, the standard 2-dose vaccine begins to decrease in effectiveness, and a booster shot is needed to fight against new strains of the virus. Statistically speaking, only 34.3% of Salt Lake County residents have received the COVID-19 booster shot. This leaves a huge part of the Salt Lake County population vulnerable, at risk of contracting a COVID-19 variant that can be detrimental to their health.
Studies have shown that COVID-19 has disproportionately affected minority populations. According to the CDC, members of minority and lower-income households are more likely to be hospitalized or die from COVID-19. This is attributed to the many obstacles that marginalized communities face when trying to gain access to health care. Midvale City consists of 36% of minority or ethnic minorities, with the median household being 60,000. These statistics show that many of the residents of Midvale City are at risk of contracting the virus and are more at risk of hospitalization or death from the virus. For many people living in lower income households with families or single parents, getting to the doctor or clinic can be hard to do based on timing or location of the clinic. For many people, physical accessibility can be difficult if the clinic is not within walking distance. We think it's important for there to be more vaccine clinics that are hosted in Midvale neighborhoods close to the marginalized residents that live here. It is especially important to make these accessible to those who don't have cars or any other means of transportation by locating them within walking distance. These clinics should be open later into the evening to accommodate those who work more or work more than one job, even work long hours. This would help make it more possible for residents to receive the vaccinations, especially the booster, in order to prevent further hospitalizations and deaths in the Midvale population.
The Boys and Girls Club of Midvale previously hosted a vaccine clinic for COVID and back-to-school vaccines on Friday, April the 22nd. It was very successful because we were able to get many people in the surrounding community to attend, including those who live in the area around the club. The location of our club makes us a great asset in helping people receive these life-saving vaccines because we are within walking distance of many homes, apartments, and even the road homes. We feel that another clinic hosted by our club could be more successful if we can get access to more resources to reach out to the surrounding community and schools and help prevent the spread of COVID-19. We feel that with your help from you all, as our local city council, our next vaccine clinic can further benefit Midvale City and further prevent the spread of COVID-19 in Midvale.
Thank you so much. Before you wrap that, the individuals who spoke, can you just step up and state your name into the microphone so we have it?
I'm Allison.
I'm Edgar.
I'm Jael.
I'm Yoltisi.
Sergio.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate that information. Are there any other public comments? If there are, you can step up to the microphone and state your name. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to council reports. Councilmember Sperry.
I have nothing this evening, Mayor.
Councilmember Brown.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Robinson.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
Councilmember Glover.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Gettle.
Keeping with the theme, no, I just want to mention, 2 weeks ago, I did go to the St. George, Utah League of Cities and Towns Conference. Not much to report from there. It's much of the same, many of the same workshops that we've all attended. There's a housing crisis, there's a labor shortage, housing prices are going up, they're going to keep going up. The one good thing about going to that conference was just being able to meet with some of the other council members from neighboring cities and mayors, and just kind of creating some bit of camaraderie amongst the neighboring cities. So I do recommend going to that for that reason. I got to play cornhole with the Salt Lake City council members, so you can't always say that you had a chance to do that. But anyway, that's it for me tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. For my report, I've got a few quick things. One, just wanted to give a thank you to our city engineer, Keith, and also Steve Bush, who on 80th South, we had a cut into the road due to construction there that we had a number of residents complaints about, and they helped us get that filled in with dirt. So thank you. Also, our Harvest Days committee is fully assembled. The last time we met, we were just had appointed the chair, but last Friday, I believe, they had their first meeting, and so that is up and running. Also, Councilmember Gettle was there as well, but attended the All Caps Arts Conference, which we helped fund over the weekend. It was great to see that come into fruition, and really excited about the Arts Festival in June. The most important thing I wanted to note for tonight is with the overflow plan from House Bill 440. We've talked about this bill quite a bit. At this point, where we are at is every city is being asked to come to the table, to the Conference of Mayors, with a potential location for an overflow shelter. Again, this is where an overflow shelter needs to be in place by October 1st. Otherwise, the state will step in and do it. And the Conference of Mayors came together and said everybody will step forward with one location. That site selection from Midvale has not been chosen and is very much in the beginning process right now. This was just decided Thursday at the Conference of Mayors, but as that goes along, we'll keep you all updated. That's all for me. The next one is our city manager report, but seeing that I'm sure he'll be back up here in I can go on to department.
So I got stuff. And
I don't know if you will be able to be heard online.
all right.
I don't know if any of us will be.
Just real quickly, I wanted to let everyone know that We had the first meeting of the Harvest Days Committee last week. We'll have another one this week, and we'll start that regular schedule. It seems like a really good group, and we're really excited. I think they have some ideas that will be new and unique in the group, for the event. And the other thing, I guess, is that I just wanted to apologize again to Heidi, because I had mistakenly not given her the information for last week's meeting, but she's on it now and will be the official liaison with the council. Just wanted to let you know that that's off and running, and that is the only thing I wanted to report on this evening.
How many members, Matt?
So there's 5 members, and then the chair that you approved last time, and then Heidi as the liaison. In addition to that, we also have, we'll have at least 2 staff members always attending those as well.
And we've had a few other volunteers, folks who would like to help out in other ways that I've connected them with. I just had an individual who's involved with Latinos in Action at Hillcrest reach out to me, and I've connected him with Molly, who's our Harvest Days chair, and hopefully those folks are all being brought into the process. Okay, we'll move on to our department report. Public Works Department, we'll hear from Glenn.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. A few items to report on this evening. I'll start with some of the not-so-fun stuff and then end with some progress. Park bathrooms opened up the very end of April, beginning of May. Vandalism continues to be a large issue. UPD and park staff are strategizing on ways to mitigate that, but it continues to be a problem. Jordan Valley held their member agency meeting last week. 2 big takeaways from that. I guess attendees first: Keith Ludwig, city engineer, myself, Curtis Nilsson, water manager or utilities manager, Wes Van Valkenburg, water lead, attended in person. I think Matt and Kyle attended online. Is that, no? Okay.
Yep.
The 2 takeaways from that meeting, much like this evening, we had a rate increase that was more than we were expecting. It will be plugged into the 5-year model. We think we can absorb it, but it will not be presented in the tentative budget tonight, correct? The other takeaway is drought conditions. We are in moderate drought conditions. Does not look like there will be any major constraints this year. It may be similar to last year on some watering schedules, but the water supply looks manageable. Keeping to the utilities theme, Curtis Nilsson, our utilities manager, put in his notice, so we will be going through the hiring process there. Now to the progress. We did get our fleet and facility portals online. I believe you saw some emails. Is council included on the all-city Midvale email list? I didn't look at that.
I think they are.
There's, yeah.
So, okay, if you have not, I will shoot it out. If there's any requests for facility maintenance needs, or doesn't affect council or mayor, but if there's a fleet need, will you click on the facilities? So this portal has been provided to all city employees, UPD, the Arts Council, where you can just click, put in a, well, you go to find a request, the magnifying glass to the left. So these are the ones that have already been entered. It went live yesterday. Appreciate Kate. She was our first submittal and helped us work through a few issues. But I think this is going to be really good in keeping communication and follow-up going. And we're excited to get it going. Few kinks. We're going to work this out for a few months internally, and hopefully we can get a citizens portal out there for the citizens to use too. But we want to make sure it's all working internal first. So that is my report this evening. And are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move to our public hearing. We've just got, double checking. One item here on the public hearing. Public hearing to receive public comments on the Midvale City fiscal year 2023 tentative budget beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Mayor, I move that we move into a public hearing.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any against? Okay, that passes and we are in a public hearing. Go ahead, Mariah.
Actually, before Mariah starts, one thing I just wanted to clarify is that while the bulk of the work is done by Mariah and Christian and Kyle in getting this document prepared, getting the data, putting it into a form that is able to communicate the status of our budget and what our projections are for next year. In the end, the city manager is the budget officer for the city. And so as we go through and discuss different items within the tentative budget, some of those are going to be at my direction. So I'll jump in at different times to sort of explain what the reasoning is. If, when you received the tentative budget, you read the amazing prose that were put together for the budget message, you'll see, among other things, that sort of my goal as we were looking at the budget was to look at first maintaining basic services, then making sure that we were moving forward with policies that would ensure staff retention. Then it was looking at long-term capital projects, and then finally dealing with the price increases that we have this year. The inflation, as we are all aware, is higher than it's been in 40 years, and that has taken a toll on our budget. So as we go through and talk about not just what is the status of our budget, but what are some of the recommended changes that we have, those are some of the guiding concepts that we use in putting those together. Anyways, I appreciate the work that the finance group has done in order to put this together, and I'll jump back in as we get into some of those more philosophy-driven decisions.
Matt was worried about stepping on my toes, and I said, we're a team. We got this together. So just an overview of what the tentative budget is, and this is true now even more because of the workshop, is that this is a draft of our estimated revenues and expenditures, and that is as of last Tuesday, because we had to have this document out 7 days before the public hearing. And so this is the information we had up until that point. A tentative budget is presented for each of the city's funds. You'll also see for the RDA and the MBA separately in those meetings tonight. And within each of those funds, all the departments fall. And then this has, like Matt said, was prepared by the finance department with the city manager closely working with us, and is officially presented by the city's budget officer, even though I'm going to be talking about it. It's really coming from him. And then a final budget will be proposed and adopted at a future meeting. So that will change whether it's in June, or if there's a property tax increase, then that would be in August. So here we go. In the general fund, the total revenues that we are projecting is $23,856,245. This is a 10.9% increase from our amended fiscal year 22 budget. We get into the nitty-gritty of that in a little bit, but that's proposed new ongoing funds of $2,268,000. $313. I'm going to round and not say all those numbers. Okay, so that does include the property tax increase we're proposing, which I will talk more about in a future slide. The available one-time funds, which is the amount of fund balance that is over our fund balance that we're trying to keep in reserve, which is 18%, is $1.6 million. Total expenditures is $25.4 million, which is an 11% increase from the amended fiscal year 22 budget. That our ongoing expenditures we've matched to our new ongoing funds, and then our proposed one-time expenditures are about $50,000 less than the one-time funds. So here's a breakdown of the different types of budgeted revenue: 70% taxes, 4% license and permits, 14% intergovernmental, 9% charges for services, 4% fines and forfeitures, and then a very tiny, tiny miscellaneous section there. That's $16.6 million in taxes and $10.7 in sales tax. And then The sales tax is 64% sales, not sales tax. All of the taxes, 64% sales tax, 20% property tax, and so on. Okay, so for the taxes, we're proposing a 10.5% overall increase, with property taxes increasing 10.7% and sales tax increasing 12%. So you guys heard Kyle talk about this in the workshop. We originally projected 10% to be on our sales tax increase to be conservative, and then have gone back per our financial policies and increased that to 12%, looking at our actuals. That we think that that is still reasonable. So our sales tax have a $1.1 million increase, and property taxes $284,000. We're not proposing any changes in our permit and plan fees. That's because community development is undergoing a fee study right now, and so we'll wait until that's completed to address those fees. And then we have a 22% increase in our intergovernmental revenues, which is because of HB 440. We're getting an additional $445,000 for that. Okay, this is our slide on property tax increases. So just for general growth, we were originally proposing a 1.5% increase in our property taxes. And then to meet our ongoing costs, we were proposing a 9.1% increase in our property taxes. So that would take us to 2.9 million from the 2.7 approximately that we were proposing. This is a $245,000 increase, which is 9.1%. It's approximately $17 for the average homeowner per year in Midvale. And then to move forward with this, you would, instead of adopting the certified tax rate in June, you would propose a tax rate increase, which would then put us into the truth in taxation process. Go ahead. We're a team. I see you.
Sorry. So as we had spoken in one-on-ones about the potential property tax increase and how that came to be, I kept several things in mind as we were putting together this projection, and I mentioned it at the beginning, but just to sort of reiterate, we were really trying to say, how do we keep basic services levels where they're at? Then how do we retain staff? Then how do we address long-term capital projects, which is really more the one-time money? And then how do we deal with inflation? And so as we looked at putting together the budget that got us to the proposed property tax increase, if you look at the ongoing expenses on the left side of the screen there, the first one is the UPD assessment. As we're now aware, after the workshop, this number is going to increase, and we will be coming back to you with a plan on how we're going to address that. But for the purposes of this, as I talk about where we're at for this budget, again, I'm just going to be talking about sort of the numbers we know for certain that were in the tentative budget, and we'll be making some tweaks. So the UPD assessment, whatever essentially that vote is for that budget is what it's going to, by the UPD board, is what we're going to end up paying. So that ends up becoming sort of a mandate. Then we looked at fleet replacement as something that we were trying to address here by moving all of the fleet replacement contribution into ongoing funds, because that's just good budgetary practice. As you recall, when COVID hit, we moved some of that into one-time funds as part of a way of shoring up the budget. But we were trying this year to move that back into ongoing so that it becomes sort of fulfilling the best practices as far as budgeting goes. Then we get into sort of the actual budgetary or service expansion items, which is the employee merit, market, and COLA increases, which is $674,000. Again, this is a number, as we look at what the other cities are doing in the valley, there is a range ranging from things, proposals that are close to what we're proposing, which is the 8% COLA, 1% merit, down to something maybe more around a 5% range. The reason we decided to propose going with the 8% COLA, 1% merit, as we discussed at the budget retreat, has to do with trying to help staff stay up with the inflationary increases that we're experiencing, and trying to make sure that we don't have another year of losing a third of our staff, because money is one of the primary drivers that caused a lot of our turnover last year. And so we're hoping that if we're able to keep up with the market, we'll be able to have better staff retention this year, which will allow us to, again, sort of maintain our basic services. If we have that turnover like we did last year, that does cut into our ability to provide those basic services. Then in addition to that, the full-time prosecutor, as we had discussed at the budget retreat as well, has to do with, we've made some changes in the organization regarding a lot of the process that we go through, both in procurement and our contract process. This has put a lot of pressure on the legal department, and in order to help with our efficiency and maintaining a manageable load for our attorneys, we're looking at bringing in that full-time prosecutor. And then the final sort of expansion item is the full-time parks technician. Again, we're budgeting for half a year, but this has to do with the fact that we'll have 2 parks coming on in the next budget year, in the next fiscal year. And that's, again, a service expansion, and we want to make sure that we have the staff available so that there isn't a decline in the service level at the other parks. So just in quick recap of what I was saying there is that as we look at it, we have a mandate in the UPD assessment, we have a budgetary decision with regards to how we handle the fleet replacement, and then the other 3 items are really about service expansion. Now, there are a few other items in the budget that we would have the ability to tweak, but it's around $14,000 of the remaining general fund increases would be considered budget service expansion. The rest of them fall into sort of mandate categories or things that we can't change. The reason I'm bringing all this up is that as we look at that property tax increase and we look at what we have available to make changes on, our options are relatively limited and would have a significant impact. We'll continue on with the presentation, but we just wanted to make sure that it was clear. And then one other thing that I said I was going to say as well that I forgot to mention is that if we were to look at this from the perspective of, where do we have the most flexibility in addressing the increase and adjusting what we proposed here, is that would probably start with the fleet replacement contribution. However, the last thing on that before I turn it back to the pro on the budget is clearly what happened, the new information we got in the workshop is going to have a significant impact on this.
Yeah. Before that, the fleet replacement was like a really good thing to have, and now it just doesn't mean quite as much. The things that we fund one time are we fund grants and harvest days with one-time money, and then our capital project funding, which we can talk about more a little bit later. Here are a breakdown of the expenditures in the general fund by department and then type. So in both sections, UPD is clearly the bulk. They are in public safety on the left and our contracted services on the right. And then that number is outdated because last year they were 44% and this year they were set to be 45.5, but that is not an outdated number. Moving into the debt service fund. This is a new fund Kyle created last year, makes things easier. Any debt that was previously accounted for in the general fund is now in our debt service fund. So we have our 2017 sales tax bonds, the lease payment to the MBA from the city, and then the CHG parking structure loan all come out of there. Okay, here's the capital projects fund again. So we've discussed this with you guys a few times. The projects on the right-hand side of the screen, the sales tax and the HB 244 money, they come into the general fund, but they are specifically earmarked for those projects, and so they're not included when we discuss our one-time money and the funds that we can use for city projects. And then the list is the one I think you've seen a few times. We have $1.14 million of one-time money for city building improvements, our mural program, facility maintenance, swimming pool seed money, the public works building renovation study, park improvements, cemetery improvements, Main Street utility upgrades, Fort Union corridor, community gardens, and holiday lights. Okay, in the water fund, I told Kyle as I was looking at his presentation last year, I'm much happier giving this presentation for the water fund than what you guys had to deal with last year, because they have completed the 5-year comprehensive financial sustainability plan and and they've budgeted with that in mind. So they completed that with last fiscal year, with adjustments for fiscal year 21 and 22 actuals. And other things to note is that this budget is prepared assuming that the water fund and the sewer fund will bond this fiscal year to cover capital expenditures included in the CFSP. And then the water budget also includes about $2 million in ARPA funds. So here's a look at the revenues. There's an 81% increase. That's because of the bonds and the ARPA funds in the revenues. Other things to note is there's a 15% increase in our user charges. Consumption is increasing by 22%. All of this is built into the financial sustainability plan that you guys have seen and approved. So it just kind of goes in line with that. For the largest expenses in the water fund, there's that similar 8% COLA, 1% merit in the water fund. That's $70,000. The wholesale water contract is increasing by $120,000. Is that the one that's changing? That will be increased. I think we had 8% and it's coming at 11.5. Okay. And then other inflationary operating increases throughout the fund for $35,000, and then the water master plan projects that are bonded for $5.3 million, and the bond issuance costs, which are $106,000. Similarly, the sewer budget was prepared per the 5-year CFSP, and is also assumed that it will bond for capital expenditures, and then also to help fund the capital projects for South Valley. So 39% increase, similarly because of the bonds, and then a 10% increase in user charges here. For the largest expenses, this all looks going to look very similar in a lot of these enterprise funds. There's the merit and COLA increases, an increase to South Valley's operating and capital, inflationary operating increases throughout the department, the purchase of a trash pump and TV transporter, and then bond issuance costs of $30,000 in the sewer fund. For the stormwater fund, that says water master plan. There's the stormwater master plan and rate study that was funded in fiscal year 2021. We're still waiting on some GIS data, so that hasn't begun yet and will likely begin in fiscal year 23. So because of that, we're not doing any rate increases or anything like that in the stormwater fund, and just are putting a 3% general growth increase into our charges for services for the revenues. For the stormwater expenses, here we go again with the merit and COLA increases for this fund. There is some additional requests for education and certification for our staff in this fund. And then there are fleet charges of $35,000. Actually, the stormwater couldn't fully absorb the fleet charges that were meant to be assigned to it this year, so that those have been cut down. In the street lighting fund, no rate increases recommended, and a growth 3% increase for charges for services. And then the largest expenses are the merit and COLA increases, which is $1,000, so that's not very large. That's, like I said, not very big changes in this. And then there is an increase for streetlight repair of $10,000. I was gonna also note that the payments for the streetlight upgrade, which is about $211,000, will conclude in 2024. And so we'll be revisiting with you guys in the future about what to do with that money, or if we're cutting rates or that sort of thing. In the sanitation fund, we are recommending an increase of 3.5%. The ACE contract and tipping fees were 7.1% increase, so that rate increase does not cover our contract increases, and so we'll need to use fund balance to cover that this year. And then we're including a 4.6 growth increase in charges for services. In this budget, we also have this fund, our merit and COLA increases, as well as in this budget is our glass and dumpster mural and leaf program. For the fleet fund, as Matt noted, the fleet replacement charges that come from the departments into this fund are ongoing, and they decreased 4.7% overall this year from previous year. We also have merit and COLA increases in this fund, inflationary operating increases, our gas and things are purchased out of this fund. And then we're having an increase in vehicle insurance, and then replacements and of and additional vehicle purchases and equipment is budgeted for $571,000. So that's kind of, if we didn't have this fund and we needed to replace vehicles, that we would have to come up with that $571,000. But because we pay into this year to year, little by little, then we can cover that and not have to come up with that money. In the IT fund, all department charges decreased. They decreased about $29,000 in revenue for the IT fund. And then we are transferring from the general fund $200,000. As this is it's a part of the capital conversations that we've had, but it's for the software initiative. It's a really long title. Kyle says it flawlessly, but a software initiative program that we've done. The largest expenses in the IT fund this year is we've got server and switch replacements on the docket, as well as because GIS moved from engineering to IT, and we're buoying them up so that we can do the stormwater stuff, then we are getting them some additional equipment and software. Questions?
I appreciate you putting this together. I was trying to find like a relevant number to sort of explain how much money we don't necessarily have to work with or play with, you know? And Musk buying Twitter is a number everyone's sort of heard, you know, $44 billion, right? So if he were to donate all that money to Midvale, he could fund our city for 1,800 years, right? Which is a crazy thing to think about, right? And that's the difference between sort of millions and billions. So I appreciate, you know, the work to try to make everything work. I just hope all the entities recognize, you know, that there's a serious constraint, you know, on money, and we don't have Elon Musk's money to make that work. But I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Could you, or maybe Matt, you mentioned reducing our COLA. Is that what you said when you interjected briefly for city staff and employees? COLA and merit.
No. So what I had said is, if you could go back to that slide.
Absolutely.
Is that as we look at the general fund, and because the budgetary issues that we're facing as far as the increase that we're seeing from UPD is ongoing money, we want to try to find a way to use ongoing money to address that. Now, the one way of doing that is creating ongoing money by doing a property tax increase, which is what we're recommending. And then beyond that would be to reduce some other amount of ongoing funding. Again, this is before the workshop today, we were just saying that because the UPD assessment is a mandate, the next one item that we would recommend potentially reducing would be the fleet replacement contribution, but that gets us into the budgetary issue of using one-time money for ongoing. And then if we looked at just straight ongoing funding, that's the merit, full-time prosecutor, and full-time parks technician. But really again, based off of before tonight, what we're saying is we believe that these three things are necessary in order for us to meet the needs of the community, and are not recommending that these would be cut. They're within your purview to cut. But we're not recommending that we would do that because we believe it would impact the services provided to the community.
So you just mentioned that as a possibility. Okay, it caught my ear just because, as I mentioned to you in the past, you know, I consider every city employee just as important as our police staff as well. You know, we all provide a service, so I wouldn't want to cut any amount of money from that in order to meet that new UPD assessment. So hopefully we can stick to that and not cut from the employee merit. I mean, we've seen as many, if not more, of our city staff turnover as we have, you know, police officers turnover. So they're equally as important to me, and I just hope that we can keep that money in the budget for police and for city staff.
I guess the question I had was just as being able to see what kind of cuts, if we cut 1% of the merit and COLA, what Well, how much money would we actually raise?
$73,520, $73,523.
For each percent?
Yes.
Okay.
And just a quick note, I wouldn't recommend deleting the fleet replacement contribution. We would just move it to one time. And then might need to adjust our capital projects funding that way, but yeah, I would just recommend moving it to one time from ongoing.
It's just nice to be able to know, I'm not saying we do it, but it's nice to be able to look at it and say, if we did this, this is how much we would raise.
Really quickly, I saw a hand up back here. As soon as the council is done discussing, we'll open it up for public comment where somebody can step up. Perfect. Yep.
What frustrates me is our funding source for UPD in the city is the same, right? It comes from taxes, right? They're technically, they should be just considered Midvale employees, right? And so they should feel the same sort of rewards and pains that Midvale city employees have when dealing with raises or cuts, because it's kind of hard for me to hear, you know, hey, we need these raises to keep things going, have someone on city staff work on the budget that maybe doesn't get that same sort of raise. I think it's an inappropriate thing to do, right? Because it's all coming from the same area, right? So, you know, if there is a tax raise, I'd rather just have it spread evenly between all of the, what I would consider Midvale employees, and not this idea that, you know, one entity gets it more than others. I think that would, if I worked for Midvale full-time, I would be very offended and feel like a second-class unit. And so I'm guessing there probably is people that do, and they don't want to say that, which is fine, I can say it. And so it's just something we should keep in mind, and hopefully everyone else, you know, I would like the people that ask for huge budget increases to stay for budget meetings, right, opposed to leave. I think that's also inappropriate, because we're talking about this, and they're part of it, and they're the biggest ask. So, you know, it's a mandate, which I don't love, because we don't really get to make a choice, but there's just a professional way to handle things, and I wish they were here to continue this discussion.
Any other comments from the council? Okay, thank you, Mariah. All right, now we'll now open this public hearing to the public. If there is anybody in the audience who would like to address the council, you can just step forward to the microphone and state your name.
My question is about the budget. I saw that there was over $1 million going to the UPD, and where necessarily are these funds going to? I heard that there was a service budget talk, but are these going to directly the officers, or I just want to know where they're going.
I think, what is the percentage? It's 80% to compensation.
85.
So,
That's the additional, 1 million is the additional.
yeah, so,
Sorry,
so we
real
have
quick.
about $10 million.
Hey, Matt, sorry, could you give your name?
You'll TC?
Thank you.
So we, right now in the current budget, we've got about, we'll call it $10 million that goes towards UPD. That covers sort of essentially two different things, one of them being our precinct here in Midvale, and the majority of the funds go towards that. But then we also have what are called shared services, where all of the member communities in UPD are able to share in those services. So that's going to be SWAT, the mental health unit, violent crimes unit, and others. And so we all pay a share of that. And so this $1 million increase that's being proposed as part of this budget is saying we'll go from $10 million to the $11 million. And then those funds the increase will mainly go towards those shared services. And there is some additional increase that is going to the precinct.
And are these services equally divided, or is there like a particular focus in the shared services, or is it just equal?
They're not equally divided amongst the services, and the way that the funding is, the way that they determine what the fees are for each community is based off of a formula that has to do with the number of cases population and value.
If I may, with Unified Police Department, there are a number of cities that contract with them. Midvale does not have a Midvale City Police Department, so we contract with Unified Police Department along with a number of other cities, communities. And so, as Matt was saying with that formula, so our share of it is about 18%. So as they come up with their budget, they hand us a bill for 18% of that total cost. And that is what they've given us this year is about $1 million more than what we've been budgeting.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments on this item? Okay,
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any against?
I just wanted to thank the individual for coming up and speaking. The budget itself is complex. The whole situation is even hard for us up here to sort of understand. I think it's super cool that I think if I were in your shoes, I would just be playing on my phone, not paying attention. So I think it's great that you came up to ask questions and were engaging. I think, I love that. So thank you.
Completely agree. All right. Is there, well, first of all, before we get to the action on this, because the tentative would change, do we need to do any sort of amending language to this, or we just still adopt it as is?
We just adopt it as is, and we'll be making adjustments. This is, to the mayor's question about do we need to make any adjustments tonight, just as a reminder, the tentative budget is a starting point. Every year, changes are made between the tentative and the final. We'll continue to adjust the budget over the next few meetings, and but for tonight, it would just be in its as-is form.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2022 R19?
Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 2022 R19, adopting the Midvale City tentative budget beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Sperry.
Aye.
Glover.
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. Brown.
No.
And Gettle.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have 2 items. Consider minutes of April 19th, 2022, and set date and time, June 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. for a public hearing to receive public comments and consider adoption of the Midvale City fiscal year 2023 budget beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, including salaries and statutory and elective officers, employees, and other positions within the city, as well as the fiscal year 2022 Midvale City municipal fees schedule, including utility rates. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I just have one question on the consent agenda for the discussion, well, the action item that we voted on, the redistricting last time. It did say in the minutes that the motion passed unanimously, and I think we should note that it was not unanimous
Thank you.
in the minutes.
Thank you.
All right. So this will be, Rory, I'll ask you to call roll with the amendments that Dustin.
Councilmember Glover.
Aye.
Robinson. Aye. Brown.
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
And Sperry.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to our discussion items. Item A, discuss award of the 2022 to 2027 concrete replacement contract to Quicksilver Concrete. Keith.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and council members and our amazing senior staff members. Thank you. Every year, you budget some monies to go toward concrete replacement. I lose track of how many years we've done this, umpteen number of years. Like I said, this is typically done through a budget process. We have a third-party consultant do that work for us. We do this in order to replace any damaged and broken curb gutter sidewalk and also to work on updating sidewalk ramps. We typically target areas where we're going to do an asphalt mill and overlay, because as part of that work, we require to update any sidewalk ramp. So we go in an area that we're going to mill and overlay and try to take care of that. So this year our contract expired, so we put out for a new multi-year contract. We received 6 proposals, all of them fairly competent, well, I would say all of them very competent contractors. There was an evaluation committee put together by our procurement officer consisting of myself, Steve Bush, my engineering manager, Susan Stengel, the procurement officer, and Tom Brown, who was with Galloway Engineering and who helped us put this project together and came up with the specs and plans. The evaluation committee independently looked at each of the proposals that were submitted without any dollar information. We evaluated the approach, the experience of the company and their personnel, and then demonstrated track record of similar projects. After that evaluation was done, Susan combined all those scores and then added in the bid prices and came up with a final scoring for each of the 6. I've included in the packet a bid abstract showing all the bids, their unit prices, and then their total bid, along with the evaluation sheet, so that you can see how each one of the bidders came out. After that evaluation, Quicksilver was selected as the contractor. We've worked with Quicksilver Concrete before. In fact, for the last several years, they've been doing this project for us. All the documents and agreements and everything have been vetted and reviewed by our legal department along with our procurement officer. So we feel fairly confident that what we did was above board and perfectly legal. In a couple weeks, I will have a resolution for your consideration and action on having the mayor sign an agreement with Quicksilver Concrete for the next 5 years of this project. Any questions I can help with? Okay,
Seeing none.
thank you very much.
Keith. All right, Okay. All right, moving on to our second discussion item, discussion of effective date of newly adopted district map. Lisa, our city attorney. Thank you all for coming.
Really exciting stuff. So on April 19th, you all passed a new map indicating district boundaries based on the census that came out. After that, there was some question as to its effective date, and you asked us to ensure that the residents understand who their representative is currently and to establish how the 2023 elections would occur. You asked us to bring it before you to discuss when the new district map would be effective. So we did some checking and found that no one knows when these are supposed to be effective. I spoke with the representative from the county clerk's office and their election division, and they gave me some pretty clear guidance. Mayor Stevenson spoke to the deputy county clerk, and he received similar information as I did, so we have that guidance to pass along to you. However, it appears that you may talk to someone different and get a different response. Rory sent out an email to other cities who just passed their new district map and received different information than the guidance we received. So the guidance we received is that the district map would take effect the swearing in of the new district, newly elected council member who ran under the new district map. So it'd be January 2nd of 2024. When that person is sworn in, that's when the new district map would take effect. So that would be January of 2024, since we don't have a municipal election until 2023. In addition to that, the person who runs in 2023 for districts 1, 2, and 3 would be under the new district map residency requirements, and that they would be under the constituents of the new district map. So they would seek election from the new district map residents. Additionally, if a council member who is running, who is currently on the council for districts 1, 2, and 3, would be considered the incumbent. That is the direction I was given from the county clerk. However, Rory sent out the email, and Murray and I think Mill Creek,
Yes.
both did new district maps, and theirs were effective essentially the date they passed them, adopted them. So I am here to let you discuss and ask questions if you have any as far as what you would like. There is no direction or statute that requires us to have an effective date for the map or gives us any idea of what that should be. So it is your decision what you would like to do.
Can I just add really quickly, in my conversations with the deputy clerk, I was told they would look into it further to make sure that they didn't miss anything. There was another language there that gives better direction, but as Lisa said, currently it's up in the air for everyone.
Having said that, I've gone through this before, and the question never came up.
Yeah.
It just we just floated along, and when the election came, the new map took over.
Right.
So I don't know.
The interesting thing about that we looked into when this was done, it was passed in 2013. That's when the council adopted a new district map, which would have been a municipal election. So yeah, I think it was done right before the election, and it just took effect. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's again, I don't know. I just know the question. I've been through this, and the question absolutely never came up.
It just seems logical that it should be, if not effective immediately, it should be, I don't even know why you have to wait until the next year, the next calendar year or the next election. We passed a map, and that, just like any other ordinance that we pass, it's effective when we vote in a majority and the mayor signs that ordinance. So I don't understand why, especially the 2024 date, that just does not make sense to me whatsoever.
Well, I can explain, how it was explained to me is that in the state election, the state map doesn't take effect until January of 2023. And, but the people who are running for the new districts are running under the new map. But it doesn't take effect until the new person who is elected for that district takes office. The public policy reason that we thought that it made sense to take effect in January of 2024 because it allows the longest period of time for the council member to be in office for the constituents who elected them.
I mean, the map's only purpose is for voting, right? I don't get special privilege voting or anything.
Correct.
Right, so it only makes sense for during a voting cycle. right? Like we could pass it today, it doesn't do anything, right? There's no action from it. So the only logical thing would be when voting would come up, even for those, you know, for those people, right? So, I mean, it doesn't matter. We can do either one, but to say only one of them is logical. The other one doesn't do anything, right? It's just a fluffy, we can say our maps changed, you know, boundaries, but, you know, at the end of the day, I take 2 or 3 calls a day from District 5, right? And I don't push them off because they're my friends. And so like, you know.
I think for the sake of, you know, we do have a municipal election in 2023, and my biggest concern is, and I spoke to County Clerk Swenson about this directly, you know, when I got a voter registration card in the mail once, and I don't know if everyone else did that, maybe, but, you know, when the state passed their maps, they sent out new voter registration cards because a lot of people, you know, their Senate or House district changed. Under city council, for me and for others, it says pending because our maps are not settled. Sherry Swenson indicated that whenever we submit our maps to them, they're gonna send people voter registration cards that are gonna match what we passed. So I think it just, to prolong it to 2024 just creates too much confusion in my mind, and especially since we have a municipal election next year, you know, there's going to be a significant population that is in District 5 who will switch to District 2, therefore they would be eligible to run for election in 2023. There's also a tiny sliver of population in District 4 that would be change over to District 3, which then also would be eligible to run for election. So I think we should make it effective. If you want to wait until January, whatever, 2023, that makes the most sense, so that people are running in the district that we, you know, they have been told that they live in. So.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't want to create the confusion for someone who thinks that because they live in District 5 until 2024, if that's the way we went, you know, they might not think that they can run for election in 2023, even though they would be eligible because they would be in District 2.
Right, and that was part of the reason of bringing this forward and getting something definitive so that people understood either way, whatever.
But it sounds like they're going to get new registration cards no matter what we do. If we say 23 or 24, we're still
Right.
going to get registration cards that say, you know, the part of my District 5 that becomes District 2 is going to get a card that says they're in District 2.
Yes, and as Councilwoman Brown, those are used when they vote. And so, yeah, I totally, whatever the council wants to do is because there's no law telling us what we have to do, so it's up to you guys.
But what we do have to do is write up the resolution that would come the next time, and so.
Right.
To the extent that we can get a guidance from the full members that are sort of pointing in the direction of the group, that would be helpful in being able to prepare that.
Yes,
I would say 2023 then.
January of 2023.
Is that when the counties take effect?
Yes, yes, because they have elections this year. Does that sound, is that okay if we have this map go into effect January of 2023?
Can I ask a question? It's still okay for us to send the map to the county clerk, and they are still going to be sending out the cards, correct? Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sperry, it really looks like
I
you've
know,
got something on your mind.
I mean, when it takes effect, as long as it's clear.
Right.
I mean, I think there's somebody else that probably has a bigger concern of it all, but as long as I mean, that's my thing, as long as it's clear so everybody knows.
Right.
I just wouldn't want us to run into the problem, you know, next year when there are municipal elections and people wondering what district they live in for the purposes of voting, for one thing, but also for those who may wish to run for an elected office as well.
Well, that's why we just have to make it clear. But that's where you said the
Yeah.
state, I mean, the state already does that, right? Where it's kind of delayed until they're,
Yeah,
until they're
but
elected.
theirs is being delayed by like 3 months, not like 15 months. That's the difference with ours.
So would it be okay if I bring back a resolution for January 2023?
Sure.
Is that okay? And does anyone have any objection if I put that on the consent agenda?
No.
No.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, moving to our last discussion item, City Council Annual Goals Review and Update from Matt Dahl, the City Manager.
Okay, so as you'll recall, last year was really the first year that we put together annual or strategic goals for the city. And I think through that process and through the course of the last year, I think we've learned some things, and we wanted to come back and talk to you about them. I'm going to talk to you about our current goals, a proposed set of goals, but in the end, what we're going to be doing is for the next workshop at the next meeting is we will be adding a discussion item on there to go into these goals more in depth. And so we could definitely talk about them tonight, get some direction on all that. But this is going to be a continued process that we're going to work on with hopefully the goal of getting it ready so we can put it in the final budget. Just as a quick reminder, the reason that we're doing these goals is that it helps us with resource allocation, both throughout the year, but also as part of the budget process. Helps with communication, both internally and externally, so that both our staff and residents know what it is the council is sort of looking at as far as our goals go. And then the next part of it is empowerment, particularly to staff, so that they have the knowledge, confidence, and support of the council as we move forward with projects that support your goals. And then finally is accountability. One of the primary ways that we've, in this last year, shown accountability is coming back. We did 2 regular year reports on the progress that we made on the goals, and then we did a report in the budget retreat, and then we will do a final year-end wrap-up of the 2022 goals and the progress that we made on those. I think one of the things, as far as the well, I'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit. So as we look at the current goals are broken up into sort of 4 categories. One is organizational goals. Currently, that means like trying to get back to normal. As you recall, last year when we set those goals, we were still in fairly heavy COVID, there were still COVID restrictions, and we were operating sort of in a non-normal way in the city, and we've been trying to move towards normalization. We have I think addressed that and gotten to that point. So we're talking about removing that goal, but that's an example of one of the organizational goals. In addition to that, we have neighborhood goals as part of them. So those are going to be ones where we have a specific goal that relates to a neighborhood. So for example, redevelop Main Street. Then we have community goals, which are sort of these broader goals about increasing the health of the community or putting in more active transportation. And then finally, long-term capital projects. Most often in the goals was referring to like our water system and making those improvements. Now, the reason I'm showing this as sort of that breakdown is that as we look at maybe adjusting the goals some, is there a reason that we would want to maybe focus more on sort of the community goals, or is this group more interested in some of the more specific projects that you guys have talked about? We'll get into that a little bit more once we get into the discussion side of things. So I won't read through all of these. You're familiar with them. We've talked about them every time I've done one of the updates on them. But right now for fiscal year 22, we have 14 goals. They range from the categories that I previously mentioned. We have made good progress in some of these categories, and then in some of them, We did not make as good progress, and we've kind of reported on why that was. But one of the big things that I think we realized throughout this process is that really, if you look at those 14 goals, in some ways it sort of says, they say combined, they say do what a city does, which doesn't necessarily give us a significant level of either prioritization or necessarily a directive vision for the city that would allow us to, that sort of staff sort of feels like they know what the vision is that the council is trying to project. Now, that doesn't mean that each of these aren't good goals. It's just that's kind of how that sort of ends up. So like I said, I won't go through all those. However, so what we try to do is maybe come up with a way of consolidating those goals in a way that it helps us kind of zero in on things a little bit. Now, as soon as I say that, I'm going to counter exactly what I just said. So does that mean I'm arguing with myself up here? Probably. So we try to consolidate the goals down so at least there weren't as many of them. But even in trying to do this, which still captures the original 14 goals, but just kind of in a different way, it still sort of says, let's do the things that a city does. And so just real quickly, right now, this proposed list would ensure Midvale City is safe for the entire community and workforce. As we look at that, that would be trying to focus again on the 7200 South Corridor, as well as other things. Kind of into that category. Goal 2, enhance the appearance of public and private property through investment, incentives, and enforcement. This both covers sort of the idea of looking at using the tools we have to encourage the public to improve them. So it's whether it's flip the strip or it's enforcing and making people do a better job of following our code. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking in there. But it also means that as we continue to expand our parks, or we address some of the needs in our facilities, that we're just saying we're going to support the physical improvements in the city. Again, that's a very broad goal. It doesn't necessarily narrow anything down, and it's probably worth looking at if that's too broad. Goal 3, ensure Midvale City plans, constructs, and maintains reliable infrastructure and public facilities. Again, there's a relationship between those two things, but again, we're getting into this whole sort of idea of making sure that we're maintaining our infrastructure system that we need for the city. Good goal, probably one that would need to stay, but we can discuss that some more. Goal 4 supports residents' quality of life through the expansion of open space, recreational opportunities, and active transportation. Last year, when we were talking about the goals, as you will recall, there was a lot of them that fell into this sort of category. So it went from the rec center to parks or trails and into parks. We have made we've made progress in a lot of those things, but let me rephrase. We made a little progress in a whole bunch of things in this category, and that kind of speaks to one of the issues is it something where we want to leave these broad categories and know that we're going to make incremental progress on many different objectives within that goal, or is it something that we want to narrow down more so that we can focus our resources into it and perhaps make more progress? Then we're increasing community engagement and participation. That was a goal from last time, but we've also had some additional, through the budget process and the budget retreat, there was some interest in sort of reinforcing that as something that we want to continue to work on, so we left that in. Supporting the redevelopment of Main Street and the redevelopment of State Street. Again, were things that we're putting a significant amount of resources into, particularly the Main Street one. And so I felt like, sort of keeping that there was an important thing. Celebrating the history of Midvale, we've had some good recent community recommendations on how we could address that, but that is not something that staff made a significant amount of progress in. And I know that the council, it was the meeting where I was out sick, but it seemed like the council was supportive of this. And so it's felt like something we would want to keep in there, but just wanted to kind of get your feeling on that. And then the final one is, over the course of the last year, we made a lot of updates to the single-family neighborhoods. But a lot of that was just trying to match what was being pushed on us by the legislature. And we have a lot more work that we need to do in that area. And so we thought about keeping that. That was a really quick way because we had a 30-minute delay in getting started. And I know we've got a lot of other things. And this is not meant to be an end goal. But I did just want to sort of prime this concept of saying we need to think a little bit more about how we communicate the council's vision. And if it's broad and expansive, that's fine, and we'll work within that. But if you have thoughts about how we can narrow that down to really be able to communicate to staff and the public the things that are the most important to you, that's great. And I think by doing that, that also helps push accountability to staff in order to make sure that we're showing significant progress in maybe those fewer things rather than a little bit of progress in a whole lot of things over the course of the year. Those are just some real quick thoughts and primers. Paul clearly has something that he wants to say, and so I'll turn it over to you to your thoughts on the goals and how we proceed with that.
Well, I like the goals, but I agree, they're too broad. And so I think in however many goals we decide, if it's 8, 10, or whatever, that we specifically get going on something to try to move it along. So you could have your safety, okay, well, what are we gonna do to make it safe? We can't do everything, so what would the council like to see to make Midvale safer? What can we do? And give specific things that we think, and we could do that in a workshop, talk about what those things are. And each goal, we could do exactly that. And if we wanna use all the goals, fine. If we wanna cut the goals down, whatever. But be able to say, and then when we do that, say, from our perspective, this is what you do as a staff to be able to accomplish that goal.
Yeah. And all I was going to say on that is I think what we did last year, and again, that was the first year that we've done this, so we're kind of working into it, but was more of this approach of saying, I'm going to report on all the things I think fit into these categories. And I do think that whatever sort of we end up with those goals, I do think that it is important for us to come back and say, we know we'll do 5 things in this category, but here are the 1, 2, or 3 things that the council thinks within that goal is mission critical.
Would be the priority. Not that the others aren't important, it's just, those are the priorities. And as you come back, instead of having to go, like, when you come back and go over the goals, you don't have to go over everything. Let's go over one every week or every 2 weeks or whatever, and talk about what we're doing to work on those particular ones and what you've accomplished. To do it all at one time is like, gets overwhelming for you and for us.
Mostly us.
Matt, I can see why some of these are broad. That being said, goal 9 has been sort of what I've been asking for 5 years now. And now I have this memo from a citizen named Mike Edwards who's literally saying exactly what I've been worried about and has proposed language, for the amendment. And I hate that we've gotten to this point. Like, setback requirements, I've said from the beginning, are too much. He's done a good job doing what I think is the city's job by finding all of the setbacks for the neighboring cities and proposing language changes. And I don't think I've been that confusing since we've walked around my neighborhood so I can show you where all the setback issues already are. So what can I do to make goal 9 a priority and less confusing?
Well, can I add something?
Yeah.
One is, we've got that as a goal 9, and then he brought that to the planning commission and they voted it down, which is something we've been asking for, and then our commission is going against what we want.
Yeah, that is a big problem, and we need to communicate that, I guess, with them more than the city. But what was their reasoning? What was the planning commission's reasoning?
I'm not as familiar with
Was
that.
anyone
right
there
this
for
point.
that?
But the bottom line is, the planning commission can go ahead and down something. It doesn't mean we can't move it on and get it done.
It's coming to us. They
Yeah.
voted it
Okay.
down, it's coming to us.
So,
But it's one of those things of,
process.
we establish what we want as our goals, and then
They chill.
they're making decisions that are, they're voting against what we want, but ultimately we get to make that final decision.
Right.
It just
that's
causes
a
a chilling
solid-
effect is what I worry about.
Yeah.
It's a solid point, and I think that I'm not up on exactly what the reasoning was that do you remember, Nate, what their reasoning for was turning those down?
Yeah, but it was specific to, because the item was specific to a property and a development, and so their reasoning was if they did that for this property, they would have to do it across all zones, so they weren't understanding
That's what we
what
want.
the council wants. They were looking at it purely from what effect does this have on on this zone across the entire city, and they voted it down based on that. So it very clearly is them not understanding what what the council wants to see in the single-family zone. And I think kind of evaluating it the way that I would kind of hope that the council does, or I mean, sorry, the planning commission would do, would be not make wholesale changes based on an individual request. But I think it would be totally different if they were seeing that this request was, that the council was asking for wholesale changes.
Yeah.
That would be a whole different thing. That's something that was information that they didn't have as a planning commission. So I think that that's information that needs to be communicated both ways.
Yeah.
You know, from this goal, it's make changes to single-family neighborhoods. It's not, we've never been specific to the point of the council wholly saying, we want setbacks to be 1 foot, or whatever it is like that, that we can take to the planning commission and say, this is what our
I think I've
council
been
is asking for.
I think I've been that specific. And I think that people have said that they've wanted them. But, I mean, I could then look through neighboring communities and find setbacks that are appropriate, I guess, and then tell you. But I just felt like when we walked around, it seemed pretty, clear.
And you've been working on that, right? And
Yeah, we have been working on that. We do, have some changes that we're gonna be proposing, but, yeah.
do you know what the timeline is on that, right offhand?
No, I don't know what the timeline is on that offhand.
But I guess what I'm saying is specifically, those are, instead of the broad,
Yeah.
let's have the broad goal, but then let's specifically point out like these things that we really want to get accomplished on
Inside
that
the goal. Inside the goal, yeah.
That's what I would.
Because for us to bring the goal, there's something, I don't want to say like a pet project, but like, there's something that our minds have thought of what that goal means. So that's what I think he's trying to say, is like, let's parse it down so we can explain,
I don't disagree with that.
Because redeveloping Main Street could mean virtually anything, all of us could give you a very different, like a very, very different look of what that means,
And that's definitely something that we can do. Too, is not only what you're saying, and that's why we want to have a follow-up discussion, and if there's any changes that anyone wants to make or recommend, we're open to that. So if there is a version of redevelop Main Street that, besides the project level, but we want to be more in agreement as far as the council is on what that means, redevelop it per the plans that we've adopted, or, something like that. I mean, that's definitely something we could do, and for all of these. So I don't want anyone to think that we're locked into these at this point. We're working on them. It's year 2. We're continuing to reconstruct it. Your points are well taken.
Matt, can I mention, I've mentioned to you before, as far as goal number 1, ensuring Midvale City is safe for the entire community and workforce. I think that we should, if possible, get some more quantitative data that we share with the public as far as safety is concerned. For instance, UFA gives a pretty detailed report quarterly about the number of calls that they receive and the type of calls, specifically down to like the very number of, down person or sick person, structural fires or stuff. I don't think, and maybe you and the mayor get information like that from UPD, but I think that that's something that we could do a better job of sharing publicly, because, as UPD becomes, 25% or more of our entire city budget, I think that we, do owe a bit more to the public as far as their understanding of the types of calls that UPD is getting and the types of crimes that are occurring in Midvale, so that we can compare them quarterly, annually, to say, this is how things have become safer, or, alternatively, hopefully not, these are the areas where it's become, we've seen an increase in specific types of criminal activity.
And that's a good point. And we have been sharing those on a regular basis with the council as far as the presentations that the chief does and some of that. But I understand what you're saying, that maybe we can find a way to present that in a way to the public that is different than what we're currently doing.
We see, often we see heat maps, and they're the bright red, 7200 south every time, for UFA and UPD, to be honest. But sometimes I think it'd be nice to drill down further and say, like, yes, this is a bright red spot, but, most of the crimes are nuisance crimes or something like that. Or, we don't have to have a heat map of like, where are all the murders in Midvale? But it would be nice to know. If someone asked me today how many murders were there in Midvale City last year, I wouldn't know because, I could go to Google and maybe try to search that information out, but that's not the type of thing that's typically been shared with us in the past in a quarterly or annual basis. And I think that's something we could do a better job of for us as a council to be able to address those concerns, but also just having that information for the public to be able to access.
I think that information's on the website. I'm not sure, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We can have I get that not everyone maybe feels as comfortable searching for the information, and so we can work and see if there's a way that we can communicate that we can come back, see if there's something that meets your guys' needs.
I agree with much of what has been said, and I guess my ask with this is that we take a step back, because with being new to this and having conversations with employees, something that I've heard fairly consistently and in different ways is that staff doesn't always feel like they have a vision from us. And so I think the goals are great, but I think what is that overlying vision? Now, all of these, I think, fit into that goal, and what we're talking about, the specifics of this setback, like those are all things that can flow into that. But I think, ideally, in my mind, for us, I would think we need to, and I think maybe this is the conversation for the workshop, but setting out the vision of narrowing some of this down. Actually, Matt, I really liked your organizational neighborhood community long-term, and in my mind, I think that's a good starting point of creating visions within those areas potentially. But then I think if staff has a vision from council, then they can come up with the ideas and plans of what it takes to get to that vision. I think ultimately you, not necessarily me, but approve that and give input, of course. But I just think that, that's something I've heard in different terms, is that this is a good conversation, but I just think for this, we've got to take that step back and look at that broader view. And I think our city staff does a wonderful job of following the guidelines that we have in place already. We have a citywide master plan that they follow, pretty much any time that we get something before us. If council has a specific ask, or if the council wants to update a policy that's, in the master plan, or any policy within, all of our ordinances, we can do so at any time. Like, we're not dependent upon city staff to do that work for us. We can request proactively that happen. So, there are mechanisms in place for what you said to occur, and there are mechanisms for, if I have a hankering to like change something, I can put it on the agenda at least for a discussion.
So I think that's probably where the workshops would help more, is if we have something that we specifically, each of us want, we don't do it all at once, this is what concerns me. Then you bring it back to a workshop and we all sit down and just discuss it as a council. What direction do we want to go to help solve this specific thing? So that we as a council come up with at least an idea of where we're going. Because, we're not all going to agree, but maybe we can start agreeing on, this is something we really want to accomplish in planning, what does it mean to do this or this or this? And be able to present our ideas to the council and say, this is the direction we want you to go.
And I might be a little confused on what's being said, and I apologize. So, I see there's sort of three levels. There's what the mayor has said, sort of on what's the broader vision. then there's sort of this idea of like, what are the goals that the council has gotten behind collectively? And then there's the individual issues that sort of come up, which still have to be addressed, but
Right.
just,
So what I'm saying is you can do all of those in a workshop. Part of our workshops is that's what we need to be focusing on. And it can be the overall goal, the vision. It could be specific setbacks that we're worried about. It could be what are we going to do with the single-family homes versus the apartments? How much are we going to let the apartments move in on, get rid of single-family homes? Those kinds of things.
so let me ask you, I think that's a great idea, as far as how we handle the workshops, and I'm with you. But one of the things that this brings up that I'm just curious about is that I do think that they're really valuable, and we do tie those down to being sort of the 1 hour so that we can start the regular meetings at 7. There are things that have traditionally seemed like they make a little bit more sense as far as some of the presentations and things that are made by outside groups that aren't fulfilling your goals in those workshops. But I guess the thing that I'm wondering, because there is a different way that we can address problems in those meetings, is that something that we could expand, move that to, say, starting at 5, when we have these individual things that we need to work through, so that we have more time to address all of that. I just.
So, and I agree, I think that would be good. We used to have a city council, a workshop, and a city council. So we met 3 times. And so one complete meeting was workshop, and we went over all of things, which really helped. I'm not advocating another meeting, okay, at all.
Yeah.
But maybe a little more time and specifically get into different things that it gets frustrating sometimes. You're here and your vision is not what the staff's doing, okay?
Sure.
And I'm not blaming the staff, it's like, this is the way I want it done, but they don't understand that. They really don't.
Well, and I think sometimes it is that the individual looking for a change, but we haven't necessarily got the full input from the council and some of that kind of stuff, so I can see it.
And, I mean, my vision is different than the other council. But we need to come together as a council to work to improve Midvale City.
Yeah.
This is where I would just say, again, where I think a vision is critical. I think everybody will have their, and I know here already in this conversation, people have individual things we would like to see. But for me, I would much rather come up with that vision and then partner with our staff and trust our staff. Because I'm looking at Glenn in Public Works. I've never worked in Public Works, and I don't want to pretend like I know the best thing to do there. But if we have the vision, then I trust that I can work with Glenn to execute it. And so I think if we can, again, knowing we'll all have specific things we would like to see, but I don't want staff, I just got this thing, I got this setback request from Bryant, I'm going to do that, and now I'm going to wait for my next request. I want, they're working on things every single day, and I want them to have that in their mind and not be 9 or 14 bullet points of what they think, but here's what I know the council is looking for, and when I'm here every day is what I'm doing, working towards that vision. I don't want to use the term goal, but that overall vision.
It's just sometimes the vision that we have as a council isn't necessarily what we have codified either. So, what I was saying is that on those things, like we have specific setback language that if someone wants that changed, it needs to be changed through the legislative process. It can't just be a vision from the council to say, like, we want setbacks to be changed. Like, we have to do that through a legislative process. And, having different council members with different ideas of what that setback should be is confusing to the staff and we need to, sometimes you've done a good job of this in the past, Matt, and that's, even if it's taking a show of hands, like how many council members support this.
I do want to say, though, I appreciate you saying that, is that I have not met Councilman Brown's needs with regards to that, and we should have brought that for the legislative action at this point. I know you might not have been talking about that specifically, but he brought it
No,
up,
that,
and I
I just
wanted
thought
to
that was a
clarify
good
that.
example of, I mean, I think all of us up here think that that needs to change, but we can't just all of a sudden tell the staff, like, the setback is this now. We have to do it through a
And I
process.
should have
where the-
acted on that,
where
and
the-
I appreciate what you're saying, and I should have gotten that before you, so you could take that action sooner.
Again, what I'm saying is not to try to say that we shouldn't be bringing those specific changes that we want to see, but I do think overall, having that vision, and then as things come up, if we're seeing something specifically, being able to address it.
So maybe, Mayor, do you have an idea of, like, when you're talking about vision, are you talking about a statement or?
It's very corporate sounding.
Yeah, I know.
I'm open to what that looks like. Again, I
Okay.
really liked these. I hadn't seen those 4 bullet points before, the organizational neighborhood. I mean, I thought that was kind of a good, I don't know if that's how that would work. I think that's a conversation we can have, but.
So I've taken down the notes on some of the thoughts. So are we saying, coming into the workshop, what would be helpful is that if the council has sort of thought about concepts for vision that we can share with the group, we do need to solidify the goals before the final gets done. So, I mean, could we still, if we sort of finalize them on the June 7th meeting, does that allow us to get into the book?
And long story short, this is probably you should have answered this, Mariah, but I have to take the microphone. We just have to have them in place before we send the budget book off to the GFOA. So even if we have to do it a few weeks, I can't remember how much time we have after the budget's adopted to. So we would have time after the budget was adopted if it stretches out that long.
Okay, cool.
Full budget might not be adopted until August.
Right. I'm assuming
Well,
the shortest time frame for us would be a June adoption. Although we've adopted a tentative that doesn't support that. But I always look at worst case scenario because that's how my mind thinks. But yeah, we would have extra time before we'd have to actually submit the budget book to the GFOA.
Thank you for that clarification. So we'll rework that schedule, but I think that would be useful for the next meeting, is if we come in with modifications to the goals and then sort of a concept for the broader vision so that we can have that conversation. Does that work, Mayor, for what you were saying?
That sounds good to me. Out of curiosity I am curious if there was this talk about a vision, if there's anybody who has something in mind of I know for me, it's a lot of, I want the city to be accessible to residents. So I've had conversations with Public Works in this system that Glenn presented today, that as residents see a pothole or a sidewalk that needs to be replaced, that we have an easy way for them to get in contact with us about it. And that's kind of what's on my mind, a vision of accessibility, and then I just named a specific. But I am curious if anybody.
So, I mean, to be fair to the council, and I get what we're trying to kind of accomplish, is that, so when I started, this is just sort of how it went, right? Like, we go to our budget retreat, and then they would just say, what's your goals? And, I mean, what's funny is when you're first elected in January, you have like 4 meetings before you, like, all of a sudden are like, what's your goals, right? And there's no way to, like, sort of prepare for that. I mean, as you do it for a couple of years, you get better at it, right? But there was never a time where, other than like, there, at that point in time is where you're really sort of solidified them. And then you could always do it during the year. But that was just sort of how it went. But for me, I guess my vision always has been, how do we make Midvale a place that people want to stay? And that's what has driven the land use policy, right? Because as soon as they get a 3rd kid, they want to move. And it's not because they don't like Midvale, it's just because they can't, or a 2nd kid and a 2nd car or something along those lines, It's how do we just keep people here that are here? Because it's a pretty good place to be.
See, and that makes great sense to me as you're talking about those specific changes.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
My main goal has always been just to be a more transparent governmental institution for people, and that we've made great strides, just looking at the microphones and cameras in this room that weren't here 5 years ago or 4 years ago. We've made improvements there, but I think we can always strive to do better, to just be more responsive to our public and have information at fingertips availability for them.
Thank you, and that's also helpful.
We'll talk about this in a workshop.
Okay,
This could go on all night.
that's fair.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments?
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Glover, would you like to do the
Motion
honors?
to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
All in favor to adjourn?
Yes.
Aye.
Does that count?
Yes.
Any against?
I don't know, do you even have to vote on that?
You
I
do.
thought-
I was looking at Robert's Rules of Order today,
All right.
actually, and yes, you.
For adjourning?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yep.
No, we've messed up.
If not, we just sit here all night?
It was.
I'm not voting.
So that
Never
means
been
we have
adjourned
council
before.
meetings from years ago that we, they're
They're
still
still
going.
going.
Oh, boy.
All right, we're adjourned.
Does a motion to
Can we
adjourn.
take a 3-minute
I'd like to call this redevelopment agency of Midvale City to order. Welcome back, everyone. Rory, will you please call roll?
Yes, board members Sperry,
I am here.
Brown,
Here.
Robinson. Here. Glover
Here.
and Gettle.
Here.
Sperry really had to think about that one if he was here.
Are you sure you're here? So,
All right, we are at the public comments portion of the meeting. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for public hearing on the agenda may address the redevelopment agency of Midvale City Board at this point by stepping to the microphone. Do we have any public comments? Or do we have any online comments?
No.
All right.
No.
Seeing none, we will move to our public hearing. Public hearing to receive public comments on the proposed redevelopment agency of Midvale City tentative budget beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Mayor, I motion we open the public hearing. I can't talk tonight.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, we are in a public hearing. Cody.
Thank you so much, Mayor, RDA Board. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening, and I appreciate your time. And would like to present to you the proposed fiscal year 2023 draft budget. As always, when we are putting together a budget, the forefront of our mind is our vision and mission and our values, so that when we are assigning numbers to line items, that we're really bringing it back to what we want to stand for as a city and what we want to accomplish and how that will reflect. I think we've done a good job doing that. Just an overview of our budget. We're expecting more growth in the Jordan Bluffs project area, a considerable amount of growth, and we're going to see basically the full value of the Zion's technology headquarter come online, and this year there's just a small portion of it that's online, and a little bit more growth in Bingham Junction project area. Main Street project area is still not online. That will not be triggered for another 2 years, so it'll be March 2024 when we first get tax increment from the Main Street project area, and we have goals to spend down our citywide housing fund balance and get that money out there and helping people get housing. Our RDA operations funds, there's really no significant deviations from the fiscal year 2022 budget. So really no drastic changes, a little bit of increases for inflation and just for staff, but that's really it. Bingham Junction, a major expenditure, we're looking at spending $1.6 million in public improvements. And this is money that's going to be directed just outside of the project area, which is an allowable use if you can illustrate that it does present a direct benefit to that project area, which being directly adjacent to the Bingham Junction project area. And we also plan on improving connectivity between those apartment complexes and through Holden. And so that's going to be money directed to improve the Main Street North entrance. And it's the concept from Blue Line that Nate has presented a few times. And then we also have a $50,000 transfer to Main Street CDA, which will be paid back as funds are received in Main Street. So that's the whole proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, but I covered the main changes, and then everything else will just be meeting our obligation with debt service, with payments to developers, and transfers to admin and the Affordable Housing Fund. The Jordan Bluffs project area, as I said, we're expecting a significant increase in tax increment revenue, and with that goes an increase in the developer reimbursement, so reimbursing Zions and Gardner and Wasatch for their investment in the Jordan Bluffs project area, and a contribution towards the fund balance. So we anticipate about $150,000 not being used, being put towards the fund balance towards future uses. So as you can see, there's a large jump in that contribution from other governments, 1.2 million to 2.1 million, as that Zions Technology building comes online and hits the tax rolls. And then in the Main Street project area, as I said, it's still not triggered, not for another 2 years. We'll begin collecting tax increment. And then we anticipate putting a lot of effort towards spending down that revolving loan fund that we have. We have a revolving loan program, which there's actually an applicant here tonight requesting funds from that program. $1.5 million was allocated to it and fronted it from Bingham Junction. And so we're hoping to spend down the remainder next year if possible. And then $70,000 towards public art. And then finally is the citywide housing fund, and we're looking to spend $2 million in affordable housing incentives. A small portion of that will be directed towards a developer in the Jordan Bluffs project area, Wasatch residential, for a TIRA that was signed, I believe, back in 2016. As I think they have 190 units that are at the 60% AMI level, and so they receive affordable housing funds for that, and then $275,000 for housing programs, and that includes the programs that are in our housing plan goals and objectives. And one of those is more specifically called out the home repair loan program, which we have a meeting with NeighborWorks tomorrow, which is an affordable housing organization that helps cities administer programs. And so Maggie Treeley has been doing some research and looking into organizations that help facilitate programs from cities, and we're going to be meeting with them tomorrow discussing what kinds of programs they offer, how effective they are, and looking at a potential partnership with them. If there's any questions, I'm happy to field them about our draft 2023 budget.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say not about the budget, but just in the article that was in the Tribune on Sunday where both you and Nate were mentioned quite a bit. I was very impressed with both of your comments and knowledge and just that type of media coverage that we received on our Main Street project area, I think is in a lot due to the efforts that you and Nate and other staff members have put together over the past few years. And I just wanted to thank you both for that publicly.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Agreed. We've gotten some great, Main Street's been in the news twice in the last week and a half, something like that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's been great.
And I know Nate loved the headline that asked if we'd be the next Park City. How much did you pay them for that headline? It's a public hearing.
Matt's making a note of this. On one of the sheets in the budget here, the percents just aren't calculated. It says 0.0 on all of them.
Oh, I see.
It appears it should.
So technically what you're passing is the RDA budgets that are in the tentative budget book, which are all the same. I think there's like an administrative charge that's different, but what you're passing is what's in the budget book and not necessarily what. Is it 0% on the budget book?
I don't know.
Or in Cody's presentation?
It's in the packet.
What was emailed to us?
We'll adjust it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Swan flag.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments, questions for Cody? All right. Thank you. All right. This is open for public hearing. If there's anybody who would like to make public comment on this. Okay. Seeing
Mayor,
none.
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to approve resolution 2022-04 RDA?
Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 2022-04 RDA, adopting the tentative operating budget for all redevelopment agency funds and accounts for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Rory, will you call roll?
Yes. Board Member Brown?
Yes.
Gettle?
Yes.
Glover?
Aye.
Sperry?
Aye.
And Robinson?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda, consider minutes of April 19th, 2022, and set date and time, June 7th, 2022, at 7 p.m. for a public hearing to receive public comments and consider adoption of the Redevelopment Agency of Midvale City tentative fiscal year 2023 budget beginning July 1st, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and the second. Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Board Member Gettle?
Yes.
Glover?
Aye.
Sperry?
Aye.
Robinson?
Aye.
And Brown?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to our action item, consider resolution number 2022-05 RDA approving proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2022 Redevelopment Agency of Midvale City budget for the Bingham Junction, Jordan Bluffs, Main Street, and citywide housing RDA funds. Cody.
All right. This is the same budget amendments that we discussed 2 weeks ago. This is the same, except for 3 additional changes have been proposed. Basically, I've just gone through and calculated all of the tax increment reimbursement agreement payments for Bingham Junction and Jordan Bluffs. So what's approved is what we forecast, what we estimate will be paid out. I've trued this up to what has been calculated and what we will actually be paying out. So in Bingham Junction, we have just a decrease of developer reimbursement of $122,686. And in Jordan Bluffs, there is a decrease by $39,510. So the Bingham Junction, basically there's one developer that had qualified for more reimbursement than they had submitted approved expenses. And so we only provide them reimbursement for what they have been approved for. And so that's really the cost for that. And the $39,510 is pretty close. So, and then there's also a reimbursement of tax increment for dedicated to affordable housing, and that is about $135,000. So we increased the affordable housing incentives by about $135,000 to match up with that payment to Wasatch Residential for the 190 units that they have at 60% area median income. And so all of the amendments we've previously discussed, except for those 3 changes, and then their associated decrease in contribution to fund balance, so balancing out the account. And so I'm happy to address any questions or concerns.
I have a question about the affordable housing incentives.
Mm-hmm.
That's a startling number, to be honest, to be sent back to the developer who's, they're not hurting for money. But that agreement being what it is, I would just like to see more data on that, specifically what 190 units, and if we could also perhaps ask them to provide us with the details regarding the actual rent
We have
amounts.
that data.
Okay.
Mhm.
I would like to see that as well. This is an aside, but the units that are I always forget the name of them, but I think they're Florentine villas, which, you know, most of those units there are set aside, I think, for affordable. You know, one of my residents texted me yesterday to say that her rent had gone up several $100s from last year's lease to this year's lease. So, you know, I do have some concerns that we're reimbursing developers that much who are then raising rents, even if it is, you know, a unit designated for affordability. I don't know many people in that position who can afford that type of increase. So I would like some more data and more information on that, since it is, you know, $688,000.
Yeah, absolutely, I can send that to you.
My idea, sorry, just to expand, if we're giving them $688,000, it doesn't seem like they would need to raise rents so dramatically.
So only 135,000 of that is associated with that agreement. The other amount is, so at the beginning of the year, we had 1.1 million, and then we wanted to increase that to 1.7 for a loan that we'd like to make to Sunset Gardens for their affordable housing project, which we've discussed, and I'm thinking it will be, the agreement will be up for consideration the next meeting. And then, so there's only 135,000 of that is for that specific agreement.
Okay.
But that is, I agree, that is a large number, and something that we definitely want to keep an eye on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Cody? Okay. Is there a motion on Resolution 2022-05 RDA?
I move that we pass resolution number 2022-05 RDA, which adopts the proposed amendments to the redevelopment agency's fiscal year 2022 budget for the Bingham Junction, Jordan Bluffs, Main Street, and citywide housing RDA funds.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Board Member Glover.
Aye.
Sperry.
Aye.
Howardson.
Aye.
Brown.
Yes.
And Gettle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That passes. All right, moving on to our discussion item. We've just got one tonight. Discussion regarding the Hive Design Main Street revolving loan. Hear from Kate.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. I am pleased to announce that I'm bringing before you guys tonight our first loan application through the revolving loan program for the Main Street area. This application was submitted by the Hive Design Group, and they're requesting a loan of $250,000. And as you may remember, all loan requests above the $25,000 threshold will be brought before the board for approval. So I'll just briefly introduce their plan for using the funds, but coming up shortly, I'll have Josh and Peyton before the board to provide their vision and to talk a little bit more about the ways in which their plans will enhance and revitalize the Main Street area. So the Hive Design Group is planning on using the funds to purchase and renovate the current Midvale Main Street Theater. Their plan is to use the building as a dual purpose space with their Hive Design Group's office space on the second floor, and they will operate the theater, which they hope to call the Pearl, on the main floor. And so once they acquire the theater, the Hive Design Group plans to renovate the space and update the street's presence and restore it to its former glory. And then I'll just briefly go over the loan terms, which were decided by the staff analyzed the proposal and evaluated it based on the public benefit criteria. And those terms are a loan amount of the $250,000 with a term of 7 years, an interest rate of 1.75, and the Permitted use of funds will be to purchase the Main Street Theater and provide interior renovations to the upstairs office space and to fund the construction of the marquee sign. You will see in the next couple slides that John and Peyton kind of have additional plans for the building, but the permitted uses will only fall underneath those listed. And then I know in the packet I had put monthly payments, but I think that that would be a lot of admin on my side, so I think we're gonna do yearly payments unless the board has any other thoughts on that. And then the two other items is that the borrower will agree to submit payments and invoices to the RDA to verify that they're using the funds for the permitted uses, and that they have to illustrate that the collateral to the proposed loan ratio is 82%. And then with that, I will have Peyton and John come up and talk a little bit more about their plans.
And just state your name for the record, please.
I'm Peyton Wonderly.
John Simner. Do we just do the next?
There's a next button? All right.
All right.
Perfect.
Yeah, so our dream is the Pearl on Main. We've been on Main Street for 2.5 years. We love it here. We want to stay on Main Street, and we, through the grapevine, heard that this might be available. So, yeah, we reached out to the owners and initiated the purchase process, and then found out this great loan. I guess, so we just talking about what our plans are here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, you know, our building and the services, the theater, I guess the tenant, will kind of work in collaboration with a lot of different, and you can see on the site map here, you know, we know there's a lot of residential coming, and we're working on those projects ourselves. There's restaurant, entertainment. So I think our theater operations will work nicely with everything else that's going on in the city. It'll bring an entertainment venue that's much needed, and it'll bring a lot of people to the street, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think more regular entertainment as opposed to 3 to 6 shows a year would be something nice to kind of anchor.
Our goal is to bring 100+ people to the street on a daily basis rather than every few months.
Exactly. The public amenity, just activating the street on a regular basis, I know safety is a huge component for what we're talking about on Main Street, and just to light the thing up on that portion of the street and make it feel more welcoming. Public art amenity, we've been working with the All Caps group, who just had their their creators conference this last week. We'd love to work with groups like that and just kind of create a space that more people can use on a more frequent basis as opposed to what we see now.
Yeah, open it up to community groups and other, you know, art amenities like that.
Yeah.
Instead, you know, it's a cool building with a great amount of history. It hasn't been renovated for quite a bit of time. We'd like to restore it to where it was. You know, some of the Burke or the Iris, you can see they had a really cool street presence, and it's lost some of that. You know, so step one would be to build that marquee and really grab the street presence there and highlight. I mean, it would give it like an instant, I don't know, personality to the street, and it would work alongside with this arts district that we're trying to create, and create a space that, I don't know, is welcoming and gives an identity to Main Street here.
Yeah, some definitive character,
for sure.
I'd say. Art-based business. We're an architecture firm upstairs. Kind of the functionality, tying in arts with construction. I think we have a lot of resources that can help us network-wise and help bring development to the street, just with who we work with on a regular basis. Activating the street like we talked about, lighting it up, making it feel a lot more safe. Creating jobs. We already have a director of operations and entertainment kind of at the ready.
And then there'd be, you know, concessions, ticket takers, there'd be
Yeah.
a whole lot of jobs that come along with the theater operations downstairs, along with, you know, our business upstairs growing, and we have several, actually, Midvale residences on our staff.
Is Trevon Bueller
Yeah,
still with you guys? Cool
yes,
guy.
he is, yeah.
He lives in the townhomes right over here.
Yeah. We have two others that
Yeah.
live in the area too, so it's a special place for us. And like we said earlier, we've been here for 2.25 years, so we love it. We want to stay here, and we want to see it grow.
Yeah.
We're excited about all the programs that the RDA is working on, and happy to be part of it. Future, so this is long range. Once we've kind of established ourselves and we're settled in, we'd love to redevelop the space using the upper floor housing initiative and kind of creating low-income housing on the upper floors of the building. And yeah, and we've worked on a few net zero, truly net zero projects in the state, and we'd love to bring that to the project as well.
Some sustainability, yeah.
That's kind of long range goals, though.
Yeah, overall, I just want to create a place that gives people opportunity to kind of present what they have to do, and the affordable housing we know is a major issue in the state and in Midvale. We'd love to be able to help out there. Yeah, I think that's the presentation, right?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Do we stay at
But before, yeah, I wouldn't go too far, probably.
Yeah, I think we have some questions.
So yeah, does the board have any questions, comments, or concerns about the proposed loan agreement?
I would just suggest, there is a Arts Council of Midvale, right? And, Quick Wits performs weekly. I would definitely engage with them if your goal is sort of broader arts concepts, to work with them. Quick Wits especially, they're sort of looking to always sort of offer more than just their Friday show, whether that's like weekly sort of lessons on how to do improv and things like that. So I definitely think if you guys reached out to them, that would be a benefit. And the Arts Council, because I do think this is a very sweetheart deal of an interest rate, with especially how interest rates are at the moment, so.
I think it's a great idea. I think one component of most successful main streets is some type of theater that not only does like performative theater, but also shows movies. So I'm glad that you guys are wanting to keep that going. I think that's very important moving forward. My question would be, if, down the road, if you're able to put in those 12 units, would you still be focused on maintaining the theater component of it? Okay.
Those would be, above.
Yeah. So it could get loud.
A lot of soundproofing probably.
Could get loud, but
Sound attenuation.
there are people, though, there are a lot of people who would love to live above a theater and fully aware of the noise. So I think it's great.
Do you guys see ever bringing in smaller concerts or anything?
Yes.
That's the only thing I feel like we are lacking in the area.
Yeah, that's one thing we've discussed for sure is.
Yeah.
So, renovating the theater itself, making it a space that has a certain vibe that, I don't know.
Yeah, multi-purpose kind of event center. It'd be nice to do corporate things during the day, just to keep the thing as active as possible, as opposed to
But then, bring in low-key kind of music.
Yeah.
Will you keep the mosaics that they have there, of like the Joker especially? The Joker mosaic is one of the best things.
Are you planning on keeping both spaces or moving all business functions to the new area once it's complete?
We'll move our offices there from the Coca-Cola.
Yeah, we're currently in the Coca-Cola mural building.
I guess my one concern on the finances is I really think it ought to be monthly, not yearly.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we have the facilities to be able to accept monthly payments, and it's just, to me, it's like, even, I'm in business, and I would rather pay once a month than have to come up with a lump sum at the end of the year to pay off.
We're fine either way.
This is
Well,
such,
I-
this is such a,
whatever.
this is such a sweetheart deal, they probably would be fine.
I just think we need to be monthly.
I told Lisa weekly cash is my
Okay, yeah, perfect.
preference.
Into Dustin's pocket.
In pennies preferably, so, yeah.
Lisa, do they have, with us providing this loan or anything, I guess it's the RDA, do they have to sort of uphold our same sort of standards with what they perform or whatnot? Like, I know our theater's always worried about, like, this swears in it, so, maybe we can't do it or anything. They're not restricted to that, right? Okay, that's good.
So you could show a rated R movie?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Probably not with concessions, though, right? Not alcoholic concessions.
Is it a theater or a bar?
Any other comments or concerns?
What's the timeline for, if everything were approved, what's your go date?
We close on the purchase next month.
June 1.
So we would immediately start renovating the office space and then working, we've already reached out to the sign guy, to the marquee and the other things.
Are you working, and I forget her name, but the person who, Tammy? Yes,
Tammy.
you're keeping her.
She stays.
Okay,
Actually,
good.
part of the agreement.
Okay.
She stays for 2
She,
years.
yeah, that's
Her
good.
group can stay and perform.
That's, I don't doubt your ability to maintain a theater, but I feel like she'd probably be a pretty good resource for you
Yeah,
there.
we're gonna lean on her for some of the odds and ends.
Good.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you all.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
And I will change it to monthly. I just wanted to see, with that one change, would the board be okay with having this on the consent agenda for the next RDA board meeting?
I would.
I feel like we should probably vote on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and not put it together. It's just a pretty significant amount of money.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Glover.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Any against?
No.
We are one. Okay, well, that passes. We're adjourned. All right, are you ready to jump right back in?
Yep.
Okay. All right, it is 9:51, and I call this Midvale City Municipal Building Authority meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Rory, will you please call roll?
Guest Board Member Brown,
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Glover,
Here.
Gettle,
Here.
Sperry.
Here.
Thank you. All right, we are to the public comments portion of this agenda. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for public hearing on the agenda may address the Midvale City Municipal Building Authority by stepping up to the microphone. Are there any public comments? Any online?
No.
Okay. Really quickly in the agenda here, it does say redevelopment agency of Midvale City. And that was the same 2 weeks ago. It didn't say the Midvale City Municipal.
I'm sorry, what?
In the public comments portion, it says the agenda you may address the redevelopment agency of Midvale City.
Thank you.
Yep, and that was the same 2 weeks ago. I saw it then, meant to mention it, but.
Thank you.
Yep.
Because I wasn't here, thank you.
All right, we've got a public hearing item, public hearing to receive public comments and consider adoption of resolution number 2022-01 MBA of the Municipal Building Authority of Midvale City fiscal year 2023 tentative budget beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
All right.
Yes.
Motion, we open the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion
I'm tired.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Any against? Okay, we are in a public hearing. Brian.
This one's pretty easy. The revenue coming in is just the lease revenue from the Boys and Girls Club, Street Lighting Fund, the city, and Head Start, and then a tiny bit of interest we're budgeting for. And then the expenditures are our bond payments, and then we are just adding an additional $3,000 for arbitrage rebate calculations, which is a part of our bonds. And that is it. I didn't have I don't have a question slide. Is there questions?
I think I've asked this before. Why don't we just have this as part of our regular city budget rather than have like separate meetings for the MBA when it seems like all of this could be built into our city budget?
Lisa can probably explain this better, but I like the microphone tonight. So the MBA is a separate legal entity. The bonds were issued through that separate legal entity, so that's why we have to have the separate meetings.
Okay. So once those bonds are no more, then this,
Right, we wouldn't need to have these
we wouldn't
meetings.
need it. Okay.
Until we build another building.
Okay.
There are other financing mechanisms, but we can talk about it at that time.
Gotcha. Okay, that's it. I'll try to remember that for next year when I ask the same question.
So if you don't pay it, the bond company can take over the building.
Okay, we don't want that.
Any comments or questions for Mariah?
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Okay, there's a motion.
Second.
I have to
Motion.
ask for public comment. Did we
Oh,
already
I'm
do that?
sorry.
I know there's
Way to
nobody
jump the
here,
gun
but-
there, Councilmember.
These are all city
We are open
Thanks for
for
keeping us in
public
line.
comment. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment on this item?
Chief.
Okay. Going
Mayor.
once, going twice, seeing none.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All of those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, any against? All right, that passes and the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2022-01 MBA adopting the Municipal Building Authority Fiscal Year 2023 tentative budget beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
There's a motion,
Second.
and there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Board Member Gettle.
Yes.
Glover.
Aye.
Sperry.
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
And Brown.
Yes.
That passes, thank you. All right, moving on to our consent agenda. Two items, consider minutes of April 19th, 2022, and set date and time, June 7th, 2022, at 7 PM for a public hearing to receive public comments and consider the adoption of the Midvale City Municipal Building Authority fiscal year 2023 budget beginning July 1st, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I motion we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I do have one question.
7 p.m.
So come June, if we do a tax increase on the Midvale city budget, do we still approve this, or do we wait till August to approve this too?
I would imagine Kyle's shaking his head, and I was going to
I
say
just
yes.
asked the question.
Take the mic.
No, we can still approve the RDA and the MBA. And,
Without.
right, and then we declare the intent to increase the property tax rate.